Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. Confessions is a short-form chat about SEO and often not from a conventional viewpoint. But today I'm going to share with you a discovery no one's talking about, and it's not my fault that it has a Gemini AI connection to it. You can blame Google for that. By the way, all the views expressed here are my own, and I hope you both enjoy and appreciate the sheer audacity that enterprise operations can operate in and within. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 30 of Confessions of an SEO. This is the 2025 Mountain Edition. This time of the year, as I start looking up at the treetops against a very beautiful blue sky, I recognize that most of the world is not like us SEOs. We're scrambling with every move Google is making now, and mostly because they are making major moves. It's one big global monster they have to feed with ad revenue, and on the back of our content, may I add. Still, the chance to stop and reflect and to quietly refocus on what the F we're doing and to get to do it in cooler temperatures and cleaner air. Well, enough of that. Buckle up, Buttercup. Here it comes. 2 weeks ago on Confessions, I explored if indeed helpful content as an update acted more as a cleanup action for a, pretext to getting all the content in their data set prepared to be a cleaner data set for training Google's AI, namely Gemini. After that show, I created a timeline graphic and a companion article. And in there, just the timeline of everything coming together, there's a very strong correlation between the standalone updates and Gemini's announcements, culminating into sort of Gemini launch once the helpful content was rolled into the core algorithm. So they didn't need to clean up in aisle 3 anymore, and now it's a self-sweeping action now. Well, for today's topic, I am going to be a little more proactive, at least earlier. I have prepared a similar companion article ahead of time of this episode so that your curiosity can be met in real time. It is on AmericanWayMedia.com. There is a link in the description, along with the one on the helpful content connections, also to Gemini. All right, here we go. This past week, I found a new Google crawler from a DNS-confirmed googlebot IP that on the surface appears to be spoofing the NAVER crawling agent. NAVER what, you ask? First off, thank you for making me feel better because I did not know who they were, and I am not the expert on every search engine on the planet, but this is a big one. I've never seen a crawler stylized like this before coming from Google. Now, at the end, it says, we're Googlebot. But everything before that, I had not seen anything like that. Now, I first observed this new creature on one of my test sites. It's a little podunk website, and it was a crawl and render crawl of one of the pages on the site. So I went looking for evidence of, was this a known crawler or was I just late to the party? And I couldn't find anything. But I did find a German football club website that makes their guest book public, or at least they didn't set their robots' text files to do so. Danke. I found the same crawler, and it had crawled on their site on the same day, also from a Googlebot IP. My first thought after that was like, well, this just can't be right. This particular crawler had the name NAVER in there, NAVER, and it was sort of deep in the middle of that string. And based on everything before and after it, it appeared like it was really super hyper focused. Can I say that any better? On Apple iPhone rendering. Just so we all understand, this wasn't a generic desktop or mobile crawler Googlebot based on a browser like Chrome or Safari, this was actually appears to be crawling and rendering as an iPhone. Now, in the moment, I felt a little bit like Diane Wiest in Parenthood as she was flipping through naked pictures of her teenage daughter with Keanu Reeves. Gee whiz, Julie, so many things bother me about this. I don't know how to separate them. I mean, honestly. So, okay, well, was this really Google? Could they have been hacked? So I had to be sure. So I checked this particular server log, and it indeed was from a googlebot IP. There are two types of Google lists of IP addresses. There is a Google IP list, which can reflect a visit from anybody, from someone in, let's say, Mountain View on their computer, or a cloud server in Virginia. So I look at the one in these cases that are only the list of googlebot IPs. So it's not just a Google IP. These are known googlebot IPs. And there are ranges, IP ranges. These are a series of numbers. If you're not in SEO or you haven't seen an IP address before, it's a couple numbers and then a dot and a couple more numbers and then a dot, so forth and so on. But these the IPs that I observed where these crawlers came from, they were indeed Google crawlers. Now I use a script that was written for me, thank you, Tony, to be able to parse out only googlebot IP addressed crawls. So whenever I have like a huge server log, I run that through the script, and it shoots me out a spreadsheet of only the googlebot IP confirmed crawls. So I looked up that IP, like I said, and you do this thing called reverse DNS, and it very clearly was a Google thing. I think I've said that before, but I just want to make sure, because everybody goes, oh, make sure it's a Google. Yes, and yes, I have done that. So now I want to figure out what this string does. What does it mean? Specifically, how is NAVER involved in it? And it turns out that there is a South Korean company by that name, and it has its own search engine and apps and a lot of things. The company's called NAVER, and like I say, the crawler is associated with their products. Now I put the strings in the companion article, and not only do they have a search engine, but they also have something kind of like our Reddit, which is called NAVER Cafe. So let's just take a minute and breathe deeply. So we know this is a manufactured crawler by Google using what appears to be the crawling agent of a South Korean search engine's crawler, specifically for not just mobile phones, but iPhones. Why would they do that? And why so device specific? What does Google need to know about how content might render on a South Korean site on an iPhone? They aren't even really allowed to crawl most South Korean sites. Now, this seems to be all scrambled up, and the questions kept coming out as I kept digging, and the more I pulled on this string, a potential explanation started to take form. There's a component in the string of the crawler, and it's in-app component, and that's kind of like what it says. It looks in apps. So once I kind of delved a little deeper in that piece changed everything. You see, South Korean users aren't just mobile first, they're app first. Now, according to the company, NAVER's ecosystem includes massive app-only content. I'm going to come back to that statement of app-only content. There are 30 million active users in the NAVER Cafe as of 2024. Plus, there are millions more in the NAVER blog and other platform exclusive services. So that seems like a lot of people, but let's compare it to population, right? Well, turns out there are about 51.7 million population in South Korea. The cafe users, there's 30 million of them. And if you do the math, that's like 58% of South Korea is using this NAVER cafe. So this puts the scale of the ecosystem that they have customers on. So when you have 30 million people actively using just one of their many app services in the country of 52 million, it's easy to kind of see why Google might be desperate to understand that app content and even ultimately user behavior. But let's stick with just the content that is in these apps. Why would South Korea matter so much to Google that they would manufacture a new crawler? All right. Good question, right? Well, apparently they are at 99.5% mobile internet usage. All right, that's high. That's like, nosebleed high. They have a 5.1 billion search advertising market. I mean, I guess we could stop there. But when you compare, Google's mobile search share is declining, whereas NAVER is growing. So it's kind of becoming clearer, yes? Now, let's put Gemini in the picture. And there is a Gemini connection with the Korean language. So it looks like in November 20th, Gemini for the Google Workspace launched Korean support. That included Korean language support for Gemini in Workspace, which means Docs, Sheets, Drive, Gmail, and it was the first major Korean language AI integration for Gemini. Then in December 2024, this is also on the 20th of that month, December 20th, Google announced they'll begin offering Korean language services for its conversational AI, Gemini Live. Then there was the Korean language launch, and they announced Korean language services for the conversational AI will support subtle differences in meaning, idiomatic expressions, and honorifics with 10 different Korean voice options. Okay, then there's like 7 months where we don't hear anything about that. And then my mystery NAVER crawler appears on July 19th. And just for fun, it's possible, if we squint, maybe that could become July 20th. And then we have sort of, again, the 20th of the month is maybe interesting on this, somebody's birthday. So it sounds an awful lot to me like that gap of 7 months could possibly have been a training period. So what's the strategic end game, at least a potential one? Now, I'm not saying this is happening now, but let's just say this is being tested to see if it can be. So if this works, bypassing content restrictions through a form of identity deception, it's googlebot, but it's googlebot that's crawling as not just a mobile, but an Apple iPhone. It's could access the NAVER app content that has never been web indexed. Cannot emphasize that enough. And of course, feeding Korean language data into Gemini training. So ultimately, we might be right now in what could be a testing phase for what ultimately is an end around play to get their hands on a massive amount of content that's never, ever before been in the Google ecosphere. And all that language data fed into Gemini. I'm thinking people shifting from search engines or apps maybe, and maybe speaking Korean into the AI. If Google could get there first and be there, that That would make a lot of logical choice. There's no way for us to know, but it's certainly the current evidence we have. And based on the players concerned, I have a feeling that's probably what it is. So just real quick, if you're like, wait a minute, hold on. So we've got random targets, a test site and a German soccer. And there's more likely more. So if anybody's listening and you have your server log data from around July 19th or 20th, look for that crawler agent. I'll make sure that it's all copied into that article so you can just grab it from there. And then we've got the technical methodology validation possibility. So, like I said, I know it's a dinky test site and likely to go very unnoticed unless somebody was actually looking at it. And then we have a German soccer site, which I know for a fact, along with my site, there's not a single Korean word on either one of them. So like I said, this may just be proof of concept. Now the odds are high that this is what a test would look like if you were preparing to mount a scaled content harvesting. It's unlikely that if this is an exercise in, quote, can we do this, that it's going to stop with what may clearly be a yes, at least from this side of the fence. Now, the timing is just too coincidental. The crawler appears specifically after Google commits to Korean AI and includes both iPhone and NAVER app simulation and targets random sites, suggesting, like I said, the test phase. So what are the stakes here? Well, if successful, Google could harvest massive amounts of Korean content to improve Google's, or I should say Gemini's, Korean language capabilities, potentially leapfrogging NAVER in AI, despite Google being locked out of the traditional web crawling avenues. That's it for me this week. Thank you for being a listener. If you have any questions about today's topic, you can reach out and text your question to Confessions at 512-222-3132. Indexilla is my search engine discovery tool designed to help get your pages found and indexed without relying on the things that no longer work. You can find it at indexilla.io. As a sustaining member at $18 a month, you can become a member of my indexation group, Crawl or No Crawl, receiving status reports to answer the question, is it me or is indexing off today? Just search for Crawl or No Crawl. Thank you for listening, and until next week, I'll see you in the SERPs.